Welcome everybody to Como Live. I'm in front of the conservatory on a very cold October day. We're going to talk about the history of the conservatory and what a great day to talk about why this building was built. It is cold out. It feels like December out here. Nice and warm and green in there. History of the conservatory is rather interesting. This is actually the second conservatory built in Como Park. The first one was in 1892. It was actually more like a small greenhouse down by Como Lake where there was a small lily pond, and that's where Frederick Nussbaumer had his house. He was the park superintendent. If you go a little bit further back into the late 1800s when Como Park was being developed, Horace Cleveland was the main park designer for the St. Paul Park Systems, as Theodore Wirth was for Minneapolis. And Cleveland kind of knew at that point that he really needed a park superintendent to really develop Como Park into its glory. And Cleveland had a little bit of a naturalistic view of the park. It should be very natural, not a lot of ornamentation. Well, in a conference in Europe, he met Frederick Nussbaumer, a German civil engineer, and he also had horticulture background, botany, and floriculture, and convinced Nussbaumer to come to St. Paul in the late 1800s. And Nussbaumer was a gardener in the park systems here, helped develop a lot of the flower beds, and he eventually became the superintendent of St. Paul Parks. Well, he was able to get the greenhouse built down by Como Lake, and it really didn't last that long. It was a small greenhouse. And Nussbaumer knew that was not the conservatory he wanted built. Nussbaumer worked in some of the greatest gardens in the world in Paris and at Kew Gardens in London, and he wanted a Crystal Palace built. Well, at the time, Como Park was out in the country. Citizens of St. Paul and the metropolitan area would come out to the country to Como Park. The zoo was just starting to be formed next to the conservatory. And it really was unpopular to think of this grand building in Minnesota. How would you take care of it? How would you heat it? It took Nussbaumer probably 20 years to finally get some funding in place, and the conservatory was built. It took 2 years to build, 1914, and it opened in November 7th, 1915. So in about a week, it'll be 105 years old. And it really was built for our climate. Back then, very few people were able to go south and get away from our long winters. And we basically do not have a winter in this building. Right now, the chrysanthemums are in flower, and the tropical rooms are 75 to 80 degrees. The visitorship on the first day of opening was 3,000 to 5,000 people. That is wall-to-wall people in this building all day long. And Como Park was extremely popular, where it had well over 1 million visitors back in the early 1900s, mid-1900s. The conservatory fell upon bad times, disrepair, as these buildings are under incredible harsh conditions in Minnesota. There can be a 100-degree difference between the inside and the outside on a very cold night. And so you get incredible condensation, potential for rust and degradation of foundations, concrete. All the systems, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, are under severe conditions and really do not last that long. They say a good restoration will last about 30 years. Well, it was in 1974 when the conservatory was put on the National Historic Registry, and that's really what saved this building. It was in really bad shape in the 1970s, and at that point saving it was not high on people's minds. They thought, well, tear it down and maybe put something else here. A lot of buildings in the Twin Cities at that period were demolished, and we look back now and kind of cringe. What saved this building was getting it on the National Historic Register. And over the next 15 years, from 74 to 1990, fundraising efforts were put into place. The building went under a complete structural analysis, and it was found to be in very, very bad shape. And the restoration took 5 years. Now this building has gone under various restorations, and a lot of them were really just cosmetic, maybe a paint job or maybe a little updated lighting. But the one from 87 to 92 really restored this building, actually to much better than when it was built. The conservatory really was never closed, other than in 1962 there was a major hailstorm that came through. You can see on the picture here, it looks like it was snowing out. June of 1962, and I actually have a friend that got married here that day. They were in the conservatory when the hail hit, and they actually sustained a little bit of damage, a little bit of cuts, and a lot of their windshields on their cars got destroyed. It was quite the hailstorm. The conservatory was closed for the summer and restored with fiberglass on the building, and that quickly started deteriorating. Here's the master plan from the mid-1970s to redo the conservatory. It went through a full structural analysis, and a 5-phase plan was put into place to restore the individual rooms while keeping the building open. So the building was built for about $58,000 in 1915, and the restoration was many, many millions of dollars. It's hard to imagine this building not being here. It's one of the few left in the country, a Victorian style conservatory with some classical elements. And it came really from Europe. In the late 1800s, the formation of steel and glass, and some of the great conservatories throughout England, France, and Germany. This one is replicated after Kew Gardens, the Palm House. Very symmetrical. It would be called a medium-sized conservatory. There are many of them that are smaller than this one, and there are a few that are larger. There's a great book about the conservatory called The Jewel of Como. It was written about 10 years ago, but it's still very up to date. Talks all about this grand building, its restoration, its history through the years. I'm fortunate enough to be here for about 30 years now, and it's been voted the prettiest building in Minnesota. The Sunken Garden has been voted the prettiest room in Minnesota. And if we take care of it, it's going to be here for a lot longer for the citizens of the state. We'll go inside and take a quick look at the nice warm plant collections. Probably the most prestigious award we have won here at the conservatory was in 1999, the Horticulture Landmark Award for Horticulture Excellence. We have a very, very talented horticulture staff here, keeping the legacy of this conservatory alive. There's about 100 different palms in the palm dome here. The central room, very, very well-designed building, extremely strong, and after the restoration 30 years ago, actually better than when it was built in 1915. We're open year-round. Just have to bring a mask and make a reservation online.